Welcome to Royal Math Podcast. Today we will be looking at attributes of a circle, including circumference. Now, a circle is a set of points on the same plane that are an equal distance from the center. So in the middle we have the center, and if you notice, no matter which direction you extend a line segment to the outside edge, it is the same distance. Now, a line segment through the center of the circle with both endpoints that land on the circle is called the diameter. Notice the diameter extends from one end to the other end of the circle, passing through the center. A line segment with one endpoint on the center and the other end on the outside edge of the circle is called radius. Now, remember, the diameter is twice the length of the radius. The radius, therefore, is half the distance or length of the diameter. If you know the diameter and you want to find the radius, you can divide the diameter in two and you will get the radius. If you know the radius and you want to get the diameter, then you multiply the radius by 2 and then you have the diameter. Now, pi, which is represented by this symbol over here to the right, is 3.14 when written as a decimal. Or as a fraction, it can be written as 22/7. Now, both of these are approximations because pi is never-ending decimal. Therefore, 3.14 and 22/7 only cover a portion of the beginning numbers of pi. Remember, pi is the ratio between the circumference and the diameter. So in other words, if you multiply the diameter times pi, you get circumference. Now, the formula for finding the circumference of a circle using radius is 2 times pi times r. So if you multiply pi, which is 3.14, times 2 and the radius, you get the circumference. Remember that the radius is half the length of the diameter. Therefore, 2 times the radius times pi is simply basically saying the same thing as circumference equals pi times diameter. Now, sometimes they might give us the circumference, but we need to find the radius or the diameter. So how can we manipulate the formula to find the radius or the diameter? Well, let's write down the formula for circumference using radius. Circumference equals 2 times pi times r. Now what we need to do is we need to think, what is happening to the radius? Well, right now it's being multiplied by 2 and by pi. So we're going to do the inverse operation, which means the opposite operation, which is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. And when we divide both sides by 2 pi, our 2 pi crosses out on the right side of the equal sign, and we're left with the radius. And when we divide the circumference by 2 pi, we end up with circumference divided by 2 pi. So we can rewrite this formula as radius equals circumference divided by 2 pi. Now, we can also do the same if we're looking for diameter and we're given circumference. So we start off with circumference equals pi times diameter. What is happening to the diameter right now? It's being multiplied by pi. So we're going to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So we're going to divide both sides of the equal sign by pi. That is very important. You have to remember what you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other whenever you're wanting to move something. So as you can see, my pi's cross out and I'm left with the diameter on the right side and circumference divided by pi on the left side. So if I rewrite this, diameter equals circumference divided by pi. Now, earlier I mentioned you could write pi in two different ways, 3.14, or you could use it as the fractional form, which is 22/7. Now, when would you want to use one and not the other? Well, if you're dealing with regular integers that are written as a decimal, 3.14 would be the way you would want to go normally. Now, there are two reasons why you would want to write the fractional form of pi. The first reason is if your radius or diameter or any other number that you're dealing with is in fractional form. The other reason you would want to use it is if your radius or diameter is written as a multiple of 7. Notice the denominator of the fractional form of pi is 7. So that brings us to cross simplification, because if there's a multiple of 7 as the radius or diameter, the only reason we would want to use the fractional form of pi is so we can simplify it. So if I have a diameter of 35, we know 35 is a multiple of 7. Therefore, let's go ahead and write out the formula for circumference, and then we will substitute in the information that we know. So circumference equals pi times diameter. Now let's substitute in the actual numbers. Like I said before, we are going to be using the fractional form of pi, so 22 over 7 goes in and substitutes for the symbol of pi. The diameter is 35. Remember, we're going to be multiplying this, so I'm going to write 35 there. Now, when we have a fraction, we must use other fractions to multiply with it. The way you turn any whole number into a fraction is that you simply put it over 1. So I have 22 over 7 times 35 over 1. Now what I can do is I can cross simplify. Now remember, when we regularly multiply fractions, not doing a proportion, we multiply straight across. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cross simplify. In other words, how many times can 7 here go into 7? It can go 1 time. How many times can 7 go into 35? It can go 5 times. So now I'm going to multiply as usual. So 22 times 5 equals 110. And 1, sorry about that, press the wrong button. 1 times 1 is 1. Therefore, we have 110 over 1, and any number over 1 is simply itself. So our answer is 110. As you can see by cross-simplifying, when we multiply 22 by the other number, instead of having to multiply it by 35, we only had to multiply it by 5. This greatly aids in the simplicity of working out this problem. But remember, it only helps whenever you have a multiple of 7 for your radius or your diameter. All right, so now let's work out some problems. First off, to the top left, we have a saying in geometry, DFSS. Draw, then write the formula, then substitute the values in for the formula, and lastly, solve the problem. So I am going to go ahead and do that. Now, I already have these problems drawn out, so I don't need to redraw them. So I'm going to start off with the formula. So if you notice, circle A has a diameter of 14. It goes all the way through the circle, so we know it's a diameter. Circle B only extends halfway through the circle to the center. Therefore, we are given the radius for circle B. But let's go ahead and start with circle A. Circle A, like I said, first thing I'm going to do is write the formula, which is circumference equals pi times diameter. Now, I want to solve circle A using both the fractional form of pi and also the decimal form of pi. So let's start with the fractional form. So circumference equals pi times diameter. I'm going to substitute in 22 over 7 for pi, and I'm going to multiply that by the diameter, which the diameter in this case is 14. So I will put 14. And remember, if I want to make any whole number a fraction, I simply put it over 1. Now what I do is I go ahead and cross simplify. So 7 will go into 7 one time. 7 will go into 14 two times. So now I am going to go ahead and I am going to multiply straight across, and I get 22 times 2 is 44. 1 times 1 is 1. Therefore, the circumference equals 44. Now let's go ahead and do it using the decimal form of pi. That way you can see the difference. So it's already drawn for us, so the second step is formula. So I'm going to write circumference equals pi times diameter. Now my next step is to substitute. So circumference equals, well, we know pi is 3.14, and we're going to times that by 14. All right, so now we need to do the work. So let's go ahead and do this work. So I'm going to write 3.14, and I am going to multiply that by 14. So 4 times 4 is 16, carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And then 4 times 3 is 12. Add our placeholder there. And when I multiply 3.14 times 1, I get 413. Now let's add these up. 6, 9, 3, and 4. We have 2 decimal places, so I counted 2 spaces. And my answer is 43.96 centimeters. Now you'll notice that that is 4/100ths off from the answer that we got when we used the fractional form of pi. The difference is if you divide 22 by 7, you're going to get a much longer version of pi than just 3.14. Therefore, those extra decimal extensions that you have from 22 over 7 create a slightly bigger number. All right, let's go ahead and move on to question circle B. So this time we have the radius, so I need to use the formula that uses both circumference and radius. So circumference equals 2 times pi times r. Now I'm going to substitute in the correct numbers. So I get circumference equals 2 times 3.14 times 3. Now, I can choose whichever order I want to multiply these. So I'm going to start with the non-decimal numbers first, because I might as well keep it a little bit more simple as long as I can. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 3. 2 times 3, of course, is 6. So now we have circumference equals 6 times 3.14. So now I must multiply 3.14 times 6. And when I do that, I get 18.84. And of course, we know that is inches. So my circumference equals 18.84 inches. Thank you for watching Royal Math Podcast. See you around like a donut.